Hey, I do believe we're live. As I talk through this, I'm looking at the list of names that are showing up, and I'll always see some names I recognize, like there's Molly. Hey, Molly, hope you're doing well. And Janice, hope you're doing good. And Linda's here today. Who else do we have on here that I recognize? Several names. Hey, before I get started, as always, if you can hear and see me okay, go ahead and type into the Q&A part and let me know that everything's coming through loud and clear. Then we'll get started on this. Okay, yeah. Hey, Rob, how you doing? I guess he can hear me okay. I'm actually, while we're waiting on more people to chime in and make sure others can hear me and see what's going on, I'm actually coming from my brand new world headquarters of russellgraves.com. I've been working for the past, I've been finished with this for a while, but this is the first time that I've actually broadcast from here. I built call it a barn, but actually it's a big kind of multi-use space. I use it to work out of it when I'm home. I use it as a studio space, record videos, to do pictures every now and then. And really the best part of it is when we have big family gatherings, we come out here and this is where we have it. So as you can see, I'll just do the quick look around while everybody's still kind of coming in. It's a pretty big space, kind of rustic finish. Got a lot of antiques that I put in here. So it's, I'm enjoying this quite a bit. All right. So I think everybody can hear me fine. Yeah, Rob, everything is going well with me and my family. Sorry we had to reschedule this to today. I have been in wilderness first responder training all week, and my flight was a little bit delayed yesterday. So instead of just cutting it really, really, really close to being able to get here on time, we made the decision just to push it off today. So I hope that you got. I'm glad you guys were willing or were able to come back again. And you know, if you can't stay the whole hour that we're going to talk about this today, of course, this is always recorded. You can get it at the end. Yep, Stephen, a month to go before we go to Africa. I'm so excited about that trip. I'm excited about all the trips. We have I'm going to Yellowstone next week, Grand Tetons right after that, and then I'm going to be home for a little bit, and then we're headed off to Botswana, and really looking forward to all of those trips. They're all great every time we get out in the field. So without further ado, I think we've got a good group in right now. And hey, let me remind you before I get started, because this comes up quite often on these webinars, that people try to do the chat. I think I don't have it turned off, but I think by default the chat function is turned off. And so if you need to ask any questions about anything we're talking about today, just fill it in the Q&A part, and then we'll go from there. All right. So with that said, I'm going to ask one more question to make sure. Can everybody see a bird on their screen right now as well as me? Should have a bird like it's a Lightroom panel, and then a screen with me on there. And if you can see that, let me know, and I will go ahead and get rolling. Okay. Yep. All right. I think we're good. All right. So here's the thing. This picture right here we're looking at is the only picture I've seen, because I don't try to preview these pictures before I do these image reviews. I'll download them, and I have to see the first one. Usually what I'll do is download them, resize them all to a standard kind of size and resolution so they go through the computer a little more predictable. And then I will just do a random sort, and then whatever is the first one to come up is the first one to come up. And so I haven't looked at any of these images. First impressions of what you'll hear me say today are genuinely my first impressions. Whenever I'm editing my own pictures, that's kind of how I do it. I don't mull too long on any one picture and just try to make a snap decision about what I did right, what I did wrong. And believe me, when I talk about this stuff today, if I take whatever critique I may give in the spirit in which it's given, and that's for us all to get better. That's including me, because a lot of one of the things I hear people say to me all the time is, man, you take a lot of good pictures. And I tell them, because you only get to see the good ones. I don't ever show the bad ones. And so, I still make plenty of mistakes. I've taken millions and millions and millions of pictures in my life. and I still make dumb mistakes and mess up. So really, these critiques are meant to help you learn, help me learn. I love seeing you guys' pictures, so that's always a treat to get to see what everyone's out taking pictures of. And realize too, I don't know all the context behind the images, so my first impression is usually kind of based on what things I would like to, if I was taking that picture, what I would have done different. But sometimes when you look at these pictures, and I'll point it out when I'm talking about this, the suggestions I make may or may not be possible in the big scheme of things. So just keep that in mind as I talk through these. I'm not one of those guys who's a flamethrower. I'm not like what's that guy's name that does like Hell's Kitchen and all those cooking shows that he just lambasts everyone that he's trying to teach how to be a better chef. I'm not that guy. I mean, you've heard me say it before. It's not like we're curing world hunger by pressing a button on a camera. We're all supposed to have fun doing this. And so any critique I do today is meant in the spirit of learning and meant in the spirit of having fun and just all of us trying to get better at what we do. So with that said, one comment here, Christine says chat disabled on this side like the last time. Yeah. So if you have any questions, just pop it into the Q&A. So I'm not exactly sure on this first image. I'm not exactly sure the species of this wading bird. So if you took this picture, and I don't know who took the pictures, by the way, either. So if you took this picture and you're watching today, help me out and tell me what species that is. But in general, and this is just me in general, I'm not a huge fan of the square format. And I know, and that's the old school coming out in me too. And that's the old man coming out in me, because, when I learned to take pictures back in the 80s, when I first started photography, when I first started learning to take pictures, everything was in a 4:3 crop. And so that's kind of what my sensibilities and what my compositional sensibilities all sort of center around. And I know now with things like Instagram and some of the social media networks, square is the way to go on that. And the reason why I'm not a big fan of square, because I think it compromises sort of the compositional integrity of the image. Because ideally, this picture here of this bird, I think it could be improved if the bird had a little more empty space on the left side of the frame for the bird to move into. And sometimes, if you can see this, I will try to, although we can kind of edit it back to 4:3 ratio. Let me do this. And what I mean by that is if the back edge was a little tighter on the butt, and see, just visually, it gives it a little more room to kind of move into. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of a little more space to move into. And so other than that, really, this is one of those things that I don't know the context of it. I don't know if you could have even done it. But as a general rule, the closer you can get to eye level with your subject, the better the picture will be and the more dynamic it'll be. I know sometimes that's not always possible, because you can't always get down in the mud. Like, I've got a new video coming out soon that you'll see if you subscribe to wildlifephotoshow.com. I found an unusual species of bird on my property, and I went out and tried to photograph it. And if I would have got it eye level, I would have been laying in the mud. But any chance you can, if you're standing up and there's a bird, Adele says, hey, Adele, hope you're doing well. She says she looked on Merlin, and then she says it's maybe a juvenile long-billed dowitcher. So I'll take your word for that. But typically on that, if you're standing up taking a picture of it, just crouch down on your rear end, get down on your knees, just some way to get lower if you can. Linda thinks it's a willet. I don't know what it is. I just know it's one of the wading birds. I wasn't sure what it was. So this is a pretty good example of getting down to eye level. This big bull bison, and gosh, I remember the day when I used to have hair like that, and what a glorious time that was. A lot of you may or may not know, but I suffer from a condition called male pattern baldness. And I compensate with all this facial hair that I grow on my face. But at one time, I had hair that beautiful and thick on top of my head, and it was a glorious day. But anyway, this bison picture, it's a good example. I don't think you can see this. I don't know why Lightroom works this way, but when I open up the side panel, for some reason on this platform we use to do these webinars, you can't see the side panels on this unless I share the entire screen. So I'm looking at this picture here because I have a suspicion, and there it is right there. The only way I'd improve this image, if you got a little bit lower, I think it would improve it. But really, the thing that's I would improve. And again, this is just my sensibility, the way I like images to look. I like pictures of wildlife with really blown out backgrounds. And when I dove into the metadata of this, it's shot at f11, and the shutter speed's plenty fast, 1/800th of a second. It's shot at ISO 400, but it's shot at f11. If I was going to take this picture, I believe I would have shot it like f5.6. And again, just to make that background a little more out of focus and a little less distracting, because if you look kind of above his head right here, you've got looks like a couple of trees growing up. And if that would have just been more blurry and more out of focus, those would have went out of focus more. But other than that, bison are incredibly more difficult to take pictures than you think they are. Not because they're not hard to get close to, but getting the exposure right. And so this picture looked like it was shot on an overcast day. And nice job whoever shot this picture on getting the exposure nailed on this animal. Oh, looky here, man. I hope I don't know where this was taken. It kind of looks like Yellowstone, but I hope we're able to see some bears like that next week when we're in Yellowstone. That'll be fabulous. I have, for the ones, I can't remember who said it earlier, it's going to Yellowstone with me next week. I have gotten some advanced reports from some previous guests who are there right now, who have been reporting back to me what they've seen. And then Trevor LeClaire is there right now too. So they've all been saying that the bear action has been pretty good. So hopefully that keeps up for us there. But, one of the things here, and this is a minor thing, this shot of this grizzly bear and this cub, always hard not to like. The one thing that's a little bit minor, I think overall the composition is good. I think the one minor thing, and I'm being really, really nitpicky here, I just wish it had a little bit less. Oops. I just wish it had a little bit less at the there we go. Having a little bit of trouble there on my end. I wish it just had a little bit less space at the bottom. If it was a little tighter crop like this, I think it probably eliminates some of that distracting ground below, because that really adds nothing to the picture. But again, as a general rule, dang it. As a general rule in my mind, you don't always have to follow it, but the rule of thirds is a pretty good rule to follow overall. And if I can lay my crop lines in there, you can kind of see when we crop it, it kind of puts that mama bear more in the in that where those rule of third lines intersect. Makes sense? Other than that, it's always a treat to see pictures like that. Okay, I think I've got these sorted by edit time, so that's why whenever I change it up, it moves it a little bit. This shot here, man, whoever shot this picture really did well in a tough environment, because that's a really hard exposure to get right, and it really takes some forethought to be able to get that exposure correctly. Because typically when a camera sees this, it'll try to expose for all that shadowed area, and as a result, you get a blown out bird as a result of that. My only critique of this, and it's typically what it is, people usually on these image reviews do a great job of exposure. It's just usually something compensational that's a little bit off for me. So really, instead of just center punching that bird, I would have made a crop like that. Again, just kind of thinking about the rule of thirds, move it from the center over to the left a little bit. Or conversely, one thing I think might have worked nice too, so you could keep that reflection in there, is just and you can do this either in post-processing. Typically, I'll do it in the field, or just make it like a vertical like that. I think, can't decide which one I like better. Y'all can chime in there and tell me which ones you like better, whether you like the vertical or the horizontal better. But I think my point is, there's the horizontal there. I think my point is, ultimately, is just think about the rule of thirds whenever you're kind of composing the image, because in this picture, everything left of the bird, the bird is facing to the right of the frame. So everything left of the bird is kind of a little bit distracting and really not necessary. Really, we're looking at, because if you crop more of the left off, you still maintain the logs in the background, the water. You still got all the contextual points that helps you decide where that bird is living. But it just overall the composition's improved because the bird has something to kind of look into. Adele likes the vertical better. I kind of think I like the vertical better as well. And that's an easy thing to fix. And people, I try to coach it as much as I remember to coach it when I'm on these trips, because the way photography is really taught and exhibited now through YouTube and everything else is just shoot everything horizontal and then crop later in post-processing. And me, I think that's from a fundamental standpoint, that's poor advice. I think you should always be thinking about the orientation of the animal and then shoot a vertical whenever it's proper to do so, as opposed to just shooting everything horizontal and cropping later. Yeah, Janice, she says she likes vertical for sure. And then Linda's kind of opposite. She thinks the partial distracting is the partial reflection is a little distracting. And Rob says, oh, okay. I see what Rob's saying. Okay. He's reporting a little bit of choppiness in the video. If that continues, let me know, and I can turn my video off and we can help that. But I think overall we should be good. I've got the bandwidth out here. May just be something in the interwebs that's going crazy just temporarily. Plus, Rob, I was going pretty fast through that, so it might not could have kept up. So when I was kind of redoing those edits earlier, man, this is one of the things. I'm assuming these all look like paint. I'm assuming, since this is a wildlife image review, these are of wild Mustangs. And this one thing I've never seen in the wild are wild Mustangs, and that's one of the things that are on my list of getting out west, somewhere in Utah or Nevada or somewhere out west, and seeing these guys. Really, the only thing for me on this picture, the light is nice. It's one of the things that I do a lot that I don't really talk about is I shoot a fair amount of livestock pictures for various commercial clients in the agriculture space that I work with, as well as some publications I work with. And so I've got a lot of experience with shooting livestock, cattle and horses and everything else. In fact, I got an email today. I don't talk about this a lot either because it's not really material to what we're talking about. But in addition to photography, I also write for a lot of magazines. And so I got an assignment today. They want me to do a story for them on heritage breeds of livestock. And so, in other words, old breeds of livestock that aren't really commercially viable or commercially popular anymore, but still people, because of the heritage nature of these breeds, still hang on to them. So I've got an assignment coming up where I'll be doing a fair amount of livestock photography. So with that, thinking livestock photography in the vein of horses, you can't always control what you do. But one of the things on this picture, if you notice, I cropped that horse that was over to the right a little bit off. But ultimately, with this shot, the lighting's nice, the subject's nice. The thing that really bothers me is that one horse's head's cut off. If there would have been a way to move and just isolate a group of 3 horses or even a single horse with the background and a little more of an environmental portrait, that might have been a little nicer. But again, I don't know the context behind this. This may have been the only shot whoever took this could have got. But overall, nice handling of the light, nice handling of the subject matter, and just think about trying to isolate fewer animals in the future. Okay, we've seen these 2 guys. All right, so that's just what I was talking about, and this is a little better job of doing that. I really, as far as the look of the picture, I like it. The one distracting thing to me, and I don't know if this was cropped post-processing or cropped in camera, but the thing that stands out most to me is the animal's leg is cropped off. That mare's leg is just missing from her hock down. And so if you could, whoever took this picture, if you could just be mindful of their feet and legs if you're trying to shoot a picture of both animals and just compose accordingly. Again, I don't know if this was done post-processing or pre-processing, but I'm going to look at this. And this was shot at f11 because that was going to be my next comment. I think a little bit blurrier background, shot at like f8. Again, that's a personal preference. Doesn't kill the image, but overall, Light's beautiful. The that colt is beautiful, and the way it's looking to go interact with mom. This is one of those pictures that says a lot. Says a lot, 1,000 words. It's just a single picture, and I really like it. And again, my only critique is just that leg is cut off a little bit. This, I could be wrong on this, but this looks like one of those boobies. I don't know if it's the blue-footed booby or some other species of booby. Here's the thing on this picture. I'll just go ahead and say, with wildlife, you can't always the most obvious thing on this bird is it's backlit, and I don't really have a problem with that. Because you can't always control when you see something like this of where the bird is in relation to the sun. I mean, like when we go to Africa next, or go to Yellowstone next week, or Africa next month, we're going to take the pictures where we find them. And sometimes you can't control, you can't make it all perfect. And so the backlighting really doesn't bother me on this. Really, the only thing I would have done differently on this is, I don't know if a vertical crop really adds to this, that a horizontal crop might be better because it's pretty tight against the bird's head. I think a horizontal crop might have been better. And that way you get the extension of the shadow coming out. And then number two, just like I said earlier, a lower angle on this bird might have been a little bit better. The background looks fine. I mean, the f-stop that was used, it looks shot at f8. So yeah, between f5.6 and f8 are good. But it's just the angle with the bird, I think I would improve a little bit. And then maybe, I don't know if you have a horizontal version of this to see what that might look like as well. We have a few questions coming in. When is cropping the animal okay? This is Adele's question. For example, I sometimes crop a bison beard when I'm after an eye expression. That's kind of a funny question. I think that's what makes photography so interesting, Adele, is it's one of those things that I'll know it when I see it. There's no really hard and fast rules. I mean, that same picture you're describing about trying to focus on the eye of an animal, I've shot pictures before where I really nailed it, and I got all the elements in there kind of balanced and look good. And then I've taken some pictures where I think I should have, I didn't really get a good crop on that like I wanted to. So it's it's really, like I said, it's kind of I know it when I see it. And so that's why when you're playing on the house money with digital photography, the best thing to do is just take lots of pictures and just kind of figure it out later what works best. Steven says you should talk to me about white part cattle. I'll definitely do that. I am familiar with the breed, Steven. I am a former agricultural science teacher. I did that for 16 years when I got out of college. And so one of the nerdy things about me is I know a lot about all kinds of different breeds of cattle. And if you ever see for everybody else, if you ever see a white bovine in the field, if they have a black nose and black in the ears, there's good chances are they're white part. And then Robert says those are wild horses. Oh, or I don't know if he's talking about the pictures we saw or where we can find wild horses. Cody, Wyoming and Green River, Wyoming. That's good to know because I might have to go out there sometime. And Linda says, with backlighting, would the exposure compensation in the plus range helpful? Yeah. So if you were to reiterate what Linda's talking about, whenever I shoot, provably 80% of the pictures I take are on aperture priority. And so one of the things I do is when I take a picture, I look at it. If it looks good, I don't do anything. If it's too dark, like it could be argued that the face of this bird is a little too dark. If the image is too dark, you have to add light into it or plus exposure compensation. And so if you open that up a stop, you could get a little more detail in the face of this bird without really blowing everything else out. So I think that's probably it would have helped just the raw image out. And then from there in post-processing, it's easy to kind of adjust your shadows and highlights and sort of bring the image more into balance. I'm always a fan of trying to get the exposure as dead close as I can in the field, because the thing about photography I like the least is the post-processing part. And so I'm not a big fan of sitting in front of a computer forever working on images. I like getting them, because for me, and if you've been on trip with me before, when we start talking about the business of photography, this is what I explain to people. For me, it's like if Target, for example, their merchandise does them no good in the warehouse. The only way they can sell it is to have it on the shelves. And so for me, because one of the sources of income in my photography business or sales from my website, it does me no good to have images sitting on my computer forever. I got to get them out of that digital warehouse and get them on the shelf, which is the shelf is my website for people to be able to see and license properly. Yeah, Janice says if you're in manual with auto ISO exposure, exposure compensation works as well. Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Janice, for that tip. Another one of the same bird, really for me, and and this is one of those things you can't control, but in a perfect world, it would have been really cool to see that bird completely over the blue sky, because you can look at the picture here and see how much contrast you get between the blue sky and the bird. So I don't know if it would have been possible for, I don't know. I don't know the story behind this picture, if the bird was flying low or it came in low and you just captured it later. But aside from that, the composition's nice on this picture. The wing position's nice. I think you captured it at the very best time. I just think if I was going to, in a perfect world, and this is when I talk about perfect world stuff, because I never know the context behind these images unless people tell me, if that bird was further up in the blue sky, which means you'd have to either capture it earlier or be shooting from a lower angle, would have really improved this picture quite a bit. Oh, and one more thing. It's a little, from my screen, and this just maybe my screen, but my screens are calibrated, but it looks a little underexposed to me, maybe about a third or 2/3 of a stop. Not too bad. Nothing you couldn't bring out, but it does look a little bit underexposed. Whenever I see I think this is some sort of iguana, but whenever I see an iguana like this, I think about when I first got out of college. I live in Northeast Texas now. I live a mile from where I grew up. And so on this farm, on the Hackberry farm that we live on. But when I got out of college, I moved to Northwest Texas. And out there, it's more like, not quite as flat as Western Kansas or Western Nebraska. It's a little more rolling hills and a little more brush species like mesquite trees. But it's a lot drier climate than where I grew up. Where I grew up, we get about 50 inches of rain a year. Out there, they get about 20 inches of rain a year. And so where I grew up, there was never a lot of lizards around. And where I used to live near Childress, Texas, there were lizards everywhere. And I remember one of the first times my mom and dad came out to visit my wife and I, my mom saw these collared lizards. They call them mountain boomers out there, but they saw these mountain boomers, and she thought they were iguanas. And so every time I see an iguana, I think back to that story when my mother mislabeled those animals. And so from there, we always called them iguanas when we saw them. But this one here, this is an example. If I saw the animal, I would shoot a horizontal and I would shoot a vertical, and I'm okay with the vertical because one of the things with the magazine work I do, I'm always thinking about the cover. And so from a compositional standpoint, this one really doesn't bother me. And I'm looking at the metadata right now. I think the only two things, if I'm going to offer a really, really nitpicky kind of critique, is I think I would crop some of the rock off the bottom. I don't think that really adds anything to the image. And this one is shot at f10. I think I would have just shot it, and let me see what lens he was using. It just says focal length 400 millimeters, so it doesn't tell me what lens he's using. So I think on that, you've got plenty of shutter speed on it, and if you're hand holding, that would be fine with a 400 millimeter lens. I think I'd have shot as wide open as you could get it, like a f4, f5.6, however wide that lens will go, just to blow out the background a little more, give a little more separation from the animal. Aside from that, it does look about a third of a stop dark to me, but that's always fixable too. Oh, Jerry's doing a lot of images today. Yeah, this is a good, nice bird in flight picture. Shot at f8. Again, I think I just like shooting them more wide open. That's just a real, nothing technical. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just kind of what you like. But if I'm offering a suggestion, I like shooting a little more wide open. But this thing, it's composed well. It's in focus. The one really, really nitpicky thing I'll say about it is, again, and this is with a lot of wildlife pictures, and I make the same mistake all the time. Always be thinking about the angle. The lower you can get, you see a lot of wildlife pictures. And if you go to some national park like the Smokies or Yellowstone or anywhere where you're going to see a lot of wildlife, you'll see a line of photographers and everybody's taking the same picture. They're all standing up. And I understand how it gets when we start getting older and our knees get a little more creakier. But if you can stand it, always try to get as low as you can to take wildlife pictures. Because one thing I always think about, that when you see all those people standing up at the same height and everyone's taking the same picture, it goes back to an old saying I heard a long time ago. If everybody's thinking the same, somebody's not thinking. And so whenever I see everyone doing one thing, I try to think to myself, what can I do different to make a more dynamic image that they won't see? Usually with wildlife, it's doing one simple thing, and that's getting as low as you can to the animal. Make sense? Oh, look at this little guy. What a cutie. Again, I said earlier, I'm not a huge fan of the square crop, but I think it works in this regard. I don't know if the original in this one was a horizontal or vertical. The real purist would say that they think the foliage in the foreground is a little distracting. The limbs and the leaves are a little distracting. I don't think it is at all. I think it's I think that's where the bear lives, and gives you a good context of how it lives. It looks like whoever took this picture nailed the focus on the eyes, which is always super critical and super important. And the exposure is right on the money, because like bison, if you've ever taken black bear photos, they're not an easy animal to take a good well exposed picture of. I'm looking at the metadata, and I don't see all the metadata's not in that picture, so I can't tell sort of what it was shot at. But yeah, whoever shot this picture, I think it's a keeper. Nice job. Another picture by Jerry. Okay, so of all the pictures I've seen of Jerry, to me, this is the best one by far. One of the things that you could have done just to try out to see if it would work, because I think you got enough separation. Might have been kind of neat to see these two blades of grass that are closest to its head cloned out. In the end, they don't. I don't want to sound contradictory with what I said with it, where I was okay with it on the last picture and not okay with it on this one. But if we go to the last picture, that would have been a nightmare to clone out. But if we go to this picture, I think you've got enough separation where it'd be a little easier and a little more contrast would be a little easier to clone out. So maybe it is, maybe it's not. I don't know. But as far as compositionally speaking, I think this is the winner of the bunch. So nice job, Jerry, on that. Exposure looks good. The out of focus areas of the background. See, he shot this one at f3.2 I'm assuming with the same lens. So shot at 3.2. I mean, those are the kind of backgrounds I really, really love when you're taking pictures of wildlife. Oh, this is nice too. I see these pictures of these. I'm assuming a tropical frog somewhere, maybe Costa Rica. I don't know. That are just, to me, when I look at them, they're just stunning subject. And whoever took this picture looks like it was shot with an external flash. I'm guessing. I don't know. Let me see if it says it in the metadata. If I have that part turned on. Shot with 105 millimeter. I'm assuming that's a macro. Yeah, I don't have that part turned on. I won't go through the trouble of turning on whether or not the flash fired on that. Looks like it was shot with the flash. The couple things are really, and this is really, 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 really nitpicky. And that one nitpicky thing is the bottom leg. If it had a little bit more separation from the edge of the frame, I think this improves it just by a skosh. But that's just me being nitpicky. I mean, I would take this picture. I'm not throwing the picture away because I got it too tight on that, because that's a common mistake I make too. And so one of the things I'm constantly, especially where I'm at the point now where I'm learning how to shoot macro, I'm getting all the cool stuff to be able to shoot macro with. And as I learn it, I've got to remember my edge control, and that is making sure that stuff, same way in landscape photography, just making sure stuff that are supposed to be within the frame gets within the frame ultimately. Okay, so Janice says that was in Costa Rica at night, and then yes, macro was a flash. So cool. Nice work, Janice. So I'm guessing this is yours. Good job. And like I said, that critique I said is super, super picky. But that's just more me reminding myself that I need to pay attention to that as well. Now this is cool. When we do our Florida Everglades trip to Florida, we go to an area of Everglades National Park called Flamingo. And when we go there, I've got to explain to everybody that even though we're going to a place called Flamingo, there's no flamingos there because there's a debate among biologists in Florida about whether or not flamingos are native to the state or whether they're just, they'll intermittently pass through from time to time. So I've never seen a flamingo in the wild. I would love to. And this group of these 3 flamingos is pretty nice picture. One of the obvious things, and I'm not even I'll mention it, but because some people would mention it, but I'm not even being nitpicky on this because I think from a compositional standpoint, the image looks nice. From a color standpoint, the image looks nice. It's a nice behavioral shot of an unusual bird. Some people, and this is not me, I'll make that clear. Some people might say, oh, well, that bird needs to be a little bit higher, or you need more separation between these birds. I think the picture works like it is. So nice job, whoever did that one. I like this one. I like this one because I have an affinity for barred owls because I sit in my house every night and listen to them on my farm talking to one another, or in the evenings, and it's always so much fun to do. I'm looking at this one. This was shot at 343 millimeters at f7.1, and that's the illustration I was going to make, is that you've got enough separation from the background where this is you can really make a nice soft background out of that. And the only way you do that is go from 7.1 to 5.6 or even f4 if that lens will do it. From a compositional standpoint, and one of the things that shooting in at a more wide open aperture will do too is, if this was in a contest or something and the judges start getting really, really picky, they may say, well, I don't like the limb growing out of the back of the owl's head, which to me, that doesn't bother me at all. Owls live where they live, and all this wildlife lives where it lives, and we just take pictures of it. But I think if I was going to improve it in one way, let me go through this. I might crop it a little bit more. What I think started off as a nice image just with a little tighter crop, made it even more of a stellar image. But that's a personal preference. I don't know ultimately that it makes a big difference, but I think it looks a little better with it cropped a little tighter, where there's less room to the owls, to the right side or to the frame right of the owl, not the owls. It'd be the owl's left side, but to the right of the frame. I think it looks better as opposed to how we originally had it. Let me cycle back through this. That may be dragging a little bit on your end, but yeah, there we go. Because if you look at this original, you've got these kind of brighter spots, and we can just crop those out as best we can. Those brighter spots tend to draw the eye to them to some degree, but just with a little tighter crop, it makes it that much better of an image, I think. Oh, there we go. That's nice. I didn't catch that on the last picture. Well, so it looks like a sycamore tree that owl's flying out of, but man, that's a nice shot. It's a good opportunity to get one flying right at you like that. I don't think I've ever had the opportunity before. Shot at 500 millimeters at f7.1. Yeah, you can't control where the owls are going through. This picture, some may say it's a little cluttered. I don't think so. It's where the owl lives, and overall, I think it's a nice shot. So whoever shot this picture did a nice job of being ready to capture that. I really like this one of just the these two gulls that are just kind of, they've both got the same facial expression. It's almost like a mirror image. They're just kind of in opposing views, and I like the symmetry of how they oppose each other like that. This is one of the good examples I said earlier that I typically am not a big fan of a square crop, but I think this one works okay because I get the feeling that outside of that square crop, there's not much more interesting. So, yeah, I think that's nice. Oh, here we go. So this is what I was talking about earlier from the earlier horse. Whoever shot this picture did a nice job of getting just a trio of horses isolated from the bigger group. And this, I don't know if this is the same group of horses that we saw earlier or not. I don't know. It kind of looks sort of that. If those other ones are in Cody, Wyoming, it sort of looks like that area with that sagebrush and a little closer to Yellowstone where you get into the mountains. Again, I'm not sure where this was taken. I probably shouldn't even be speculating. But one of the things I learned when I talked about doing livestock photography, one of the things I learned that, and again, I don't know if this may be the only shot for it, but what did the next 5 seconds look at, or the previous 5 seconds? Sometimes if you make just a quick sound, if you're not on, I don't think you can do this on national park land, but if this is just horses in a field, you can make it sound like you're calling a dog. And sometimes they'll just make them look at you for a second. Or if you just give it a second, horses are always going to raise their head and look up. So I think, and this is me being really, really, really super nitpicky, I think if you waited for all 3 of the horses' heads to be up, if that ever happened, it would have made it a little bit nicer. But overall, I really like a lot about this image. I like the lighting on it. I like how the foreground kind of falls away, and you've got a nice background behind it in the mountains. It's a nice little swan. Again, I've mentioned this before, and I feel like I get stuck in a rut because it's really, I have learned that with wildlife photography, I make the same mistakes over and over and over again. And that's typically when I look at everybody else's images. And I'm not going to say it's a mistake, but typically I find the same issues with what I make mistakes in that people can improve on their photography as well. And on this one, I couldn't see it in the metadata, but on this picture, just a more wide open f-stop. This background is a little distracting, but if you had a more wide open f-stop, I think that would improve it some. And again, this is back to me being super picky. I don't know after this swan did the wing flap, I don't know what it did after that, but if it maybe swam to an area where you could get the background further away from it, wait it out, see if you'll do it again. I like the fact that it is facing away from the frame. It really gives you a chance to see that feather detail, and this is not an easy exposure either. So whoever shot this did a nice job on that. This is I'm not sure what kind of, it's kind of cool. The thing, so there's 2 things of this picture is my first impressions. I'm just going to take a peek. One, it was shot at f14, and I think you know what I'm going to say after this. If it had been shot a little more wide open aperture, it have made some of those circular highlights go even more sort of oblique and out of focus. And I really like the body language of this lizard. And if you look, he's got his hands kind of crossed like that. I think that's super cool. And with that said, I wish it was not quite as tight on that bottom hand. I wish you could see more of the bottom hand. So that was just apparently obvious what he's doing. What this picture reminds me of, y'all remember Red Fox on Sanford and Sons when he used to talk about, I used to watch that show all the time when I was a kid, when he talked about, tell Elizabeth he was having the big one. He was coming home to see her. That's what that picture reminds me of. But overall, nice. I like some people might say, well, the background's a little distracting because there's too much of it. It might look better in the vertical, and it might. But I like the horizontal version of this too. I think this opens this thing up for a lot of opportunities in terms of just interpreting the picture. Or one of the things that you've heard me say before, if you listen to many of these, one of the things that drives my creative sensibilities on how I frame pictures is I do so much work for magazines. I'm always thinking, where are you going to put the words on the page around my picture? And so this is one of those pictures that if you take it for a magazine, they've got plenty of kind of neutral spots to put words around that lizard. So I like it as a horizontal. It'd been neat to see it as a vertical just to kind of compare the two. But nice job, whoever shot that picture. Oh, that looks like a little tree frog of some sort. This is nice too. And I can't show you this, but again, if I'm being nitpicky, I wish you had a little more room to look into up here. So in other words, if you look at the lower right-hand side of the frame where this little stick is down there, I wish there was a little less here and a little more in the diagonal of that, just to have a little more room for the frog to look into. But other than that, this picture checks all the boxes for me. I think I love the soft, even lighting in it. Even though those sunrise mornings and sunrise afternoons are great, you can't beat an overcast day or an overcast canopy where you get that soft lighting in there. And just because you can see that just that soft, almost looks like a studio light in its eyes, and nailed the the focus on this one, again, me being nitpicky compositionally, I think if it was less to the right, more to the left, it would have been it might have made the picture a little bit stronger, but I'll never know because I haven't seen this picture. Kind of like this one. So the last one is sort of what I'm talking about. If you look at this picture, the lower left, you've got less eliminated and it has more room in the upper right and the right side to stare into. So what this image lacked, this image gained. And so that's sort of what I'm talking about in terms of giving more space for the animal to look into. As I'm looking at this, and this is being really, really, really nitpicky because this is super hard to do. I know from experience. This was shot at f20. It looks like that near eye is a little bit soft, but this was definitely shot with the flash. I can tell that. But it looks like this near eye is a little bit soft, but that's me being a little bit nitpicky. Because that eye is a little soft, I wouldn't throw this picture away. I think it's still, it's the totality of the image that makes it work, not just the fact that that little slit of its eye might have been a little soft. Janice says that this one here was a Jesus Christ lizard. Oh, that's a Jesus Christ lizard. I'm sorry. Interesting. I never knew there was a such thing. So this picture, this looks like a Scarlet Macaw, I think. This is the challenge here is the sky. Nothing against the composition. The composition looks fine. The subject matter is great. The thing here is, and this is sometimes hard to do, but I try to do it as much as I can. If you've ever got an overcast or a bright colored sky, it's just hard to make a picture in that sort of environment. So what I encourage people to do, if you can, and I don't know the thought behind, or I don't know I don't know what the behind the scenes look like on this image. If you could have moved left or right and maybe got a tree canopy or something behind you, but whenever you have that bright sky around any kind of animal, it just sucks all the color out of it. And I think that's what's happening here. So other than just repositioning yourself, and maybe you couldn't, I don't know, but other than repositioning yourself, there's not much you can do to work with the sky and work with the subject there. And that's a great blue heron catching something. Yeah, I mean, it's compositionally, it's nice. It kind of checks those boxes I keep talking about. The only thing I would say about this one is I just wish it was at a lower angle. I think that really does improve pictures more than what people give it credit for, but I think a lower angle would have helped on this one if you could. And then but other than that, I mean, this is not an easy exposure either, and from the looks of things, the exposure looks pretty well dialed in. Little Harlequin Duck, that's a great wing flap, and it's back a little bit. That, you know, it's the same as I said on the last one. It's a hard exposure. It's genuinely, or it's reasonably composed well. The only thing is, I just wish it was a little bit lower on the. I just wish the composition was the angle was a little bit lower, because when the angle is a little lower, all of this becomes in the background becomes more out of focus, because whoever shot this shot it with a 500 millimeter lens at f5.6. Oh, it's a mandarin duck. I said Harlequin. I said the wrong duck. I knew that, Linda. She corrected me. Thank you for that. But anyway, I think a lower angle would have made that background go a lot more out of focus, and I think it'd have been a little more pleasing composition. So this one here, this goes back in the scene of what in the frame of what I was talking about with the sky. If it's overcast and the water's kind of bright like that, it's just a hard picture to get a lot of good deep color and saturated color in the image. And so, even though if it's remarkable, I'll try to take it, but usually, in the words of the great philosopher Kenny Rogers, sometimes you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. And sometimes, no matter how hard you try or the amount of technology you have in your hands, it's just hard to take a super stunning picture when what Mother Nature's giving you isn't the best scenario. And really bright overcast skies are one of those scenarios, or really bright water like this is another scenario. But I will concede, you take what you take when you get it. And sometimes we just have to do that and work with the best we can. And that's looks like whoever took this picture is what they did there. And these I'd be interested who shot this picture, because these fallow deer are pretty common in Texas. They're Texas, whether you know it or not, is one of those places that a lot of animals that are classified as exotics on some of these big ranches in Texas, they're more numerous than they are in their native range where those animals came from. So that's where it looks like this is. This looks like more of a sparring match instead of a fighting match, just based on the body language of the animals. If they were actually fighting, I would have said wait till they cleared that tree behind them, that big log behind them. But since they were sparring, they probably just tinkled their antlers together just for a brief moment, and then kind of went about doing what they were doing. Oh, taking near London is what Mary said. Okay. Wait, London, Texas, or London's like England? Because there is a London, Texas, by the way. I'll wait for that answer there. But other than that, I mean, the background, I love the subject matter. I think it's composed well. The background, that log, if I'm being honest, is a little distracting, but I'm taking the same picture every time I see it, because you can't get out and move that log, and it's not every day you see the animals doing what they're doing, and so you take it. Okay, she says London, England. Because if you'd have said London, Texas, Mary, that makes sense as well, because that's down in the Texas Hill Country where a lot of those exotics live. But anyway, I'd have taken it too, because you can't get out and move the log, and animals are going to do what they're going to do when they're going to do it. So nice job there. I really like this shot. This is a really good backlit shot. It's just the compositionally, it's good. Somebody who's really nitpicky, and I'm not saying this, but might say, well, that grass is a little distracting on the foreground. To me, it's not. It's kind of part of the thing that tells the story of where that bird's hunting. But I really like the highlights around the edge of this bird. So that's not always an easy exposure to get. So whoever shot this one did a really nice job. And compositionally, it's a fine image as well. I think from the polar bear standpoint, I think if you've been listening to me, you know what I'm going to say, but I understand on polar bears are a different game. This might have been taken from one of those polar bear buggies up in Churchill, Canada. But other than that, I mean, it's just compositionally, it's nice. And again, this isn't always an easy exposure to try to get, but whoever did this one did a nice job as well on taking this picture. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed. This may be the polar bears. We may be doing polar bears. As far as I know, this fall, COVID's kind of kept us away from the polar bears, but it's last I heard, everything's still a go. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, on this reddish egret preening itself, the same two things I've been saying all along. I think a lower angle would have been nicer. This was shot at f5.6, and even at f5.6, you'll find, and you can practice this at home. It's easy. Shoot from standing level. It's something in your yard. Just place something out in your yard and look at the background, and then move lower, like at a seated level, and shoot the same object, and then see how the background changes. And you'll be pleasantly surprised at how more pleasing the background becomes just by changing your angle there. This is nice. As I'm sitting here talking to you guys, I'm looking right out. So I don't know if I showed it when I did a little quick look around, but I've got an overhead door built into this studio that I can raise up. And like right now, the windows are open. The breeze is blowing through, but I'm looking outside, and I keep seeing 3 or 4 hummingbirds flying around outside as I catch movement out of the right side of my eye every now and then. So I love hummingbirds, and this is a nice job of capturing one in flight. The composition, it looks good. I don't see the metadata, so I can't dissect the f-stop on it. But yeah, looks nice. So good job there. Well, this is a little bit cheating, Linda, because you know my affinity for small mammals, and this looks like a little ermine, and he's cute as he can be. I really like this. Is one example where if you've ever seen an ermine before, they move really quick. They're unpredictable. It's hard to get a picture of one, but the fact that you got this one is really nice. I do like your use of f-stop. So the most important thing is in focus, and that's the eye of the animal. And then it doesn't bother me that, because this really works well if you have to shoot an awkward angle like this, where the most important thing is in focus, and that's the eye of the animal. And as it gets further away, the focus just kind of falls off and becomes soft and creamy the further it gets away from the eyes. And I think in this case, it really works. Me being super nitpicky, again, angle makes a lot of difference, but I understand sometimes you take what you take, and And I would have done the same thing in this case. So nice job there. Oh, it's a long-tailed weasel in Yellowstone, so keep your eye out on the trip. I will. You'll have to send me a message later on and tell me exactly where that was, and we'll be on the lookout for them. So this is a nice one, this pronghorn antelope. This kind of checks all the boxes what I was talking about. If you're at a higher angle on this animal, the background wouldn't look nearly as nice, but as it is, love the side lighting. I mean, a pronghorn antelope in dead grass like this is an iconic picture of the American West, and this is a really nice job. I'm going to look at something right quick. This was shot at f8, so yeah, that's one of two things I was going to say. I would have shot it at f5.6 or f4 if you could have gotten there. And again, if I'm being really, really, really super nitpicky, let me try to do this here. I might crop it just a little bit. Just kind of get it a little bit tighter in there. Something like that, I think, is a little more compelling. Other than that, nice job. I mean, again, my comments on that are being just really nitpicky. Is that the last one? Can't believe it. If it is, let me look. Like I said, I haven't seen these before. Thought I wouldn't be done this quick. But yeah, that's the last one. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. Yes, I want to quit Lightroom. I want to stop sharing my screen and then get back where it's just you and I. There we go. And David said he had 5 photos. I'm guessing you didn't see them in here, David? Because one of the things, I don't know when you might have put them in there. If you're saying I didn't critique them and there were 5 photos in there, I downloaded what was on the server at about 10 o'clock this morning. So I don't know if they came in after that or not. If they did come in after that, or if I just missed them, my apologies for that. I will. I don't know how to answer that, David. I'll tell you what I'll do. If you'll send me an email at russell@russellgraves.com. I may have your email address, but I can't remember if we've corresponded via email before. You and I can jump on and go over those together. So I don't know what happened there. I just downloaded what was in the big folder and then and went from there. So I apologize. It's my fault. So I apologize if I missed those things. That was a oversight on my part. And I know you always bring good pictures and I'd love to see them. So let me go back and relook and I'll make that right by you. I promise there. Linda says, with using low f-stops, one thing I've noticed is if you're low f-stops, sometimes the part of the animal gets blurred when you don't want that. Also, if you're shooting from a long distance, if lower f-stops can soften the entire photo. Well, that's a 2-part question. So if you're shooting at a long distance, the lower f-stop, if it's a good lens, I don't think the lower f-stop really affects the overall sharpness of the photo. I think it's more the atmospheric conditions, because right now I'm looking, it's probably a quarter of a mile or a little more to the edge of my property, and I'm looking out my north window to the edge of my property. And the further things are away, the more blurry it gets, because it's a pretty humid day today, and you're just looking through all that atmosphere. And so usually it's just the atmospheric conditions that lends itself when you're shooting further away. And then, yeah, when you're shooting at lower, and it's a trade-off, and you're right, when you're shooting at a lower f-stop, you give up on parts of the body you want in focus. But typically for me, and this is why I keep talking about, it's just kind of a personal aesthetic. I like the eye to be really in focus, and if everything else beyond that goes out of focus, I'm kind of okay with that. And then Steven said the same thing, had 4 pictures in there. So yeah, so what I may do on both of you guys, if y'all can send me an email, I'll just go back and look, and somehow I missed them. I don't know how. It's for me, it's from what I see on my end, I just go to the folder, hit download, and it's usually downloads everything. So I don't have an explanation of what might have happened. I'll go back and look and see if I can find them. If y'all can send me a message to my email and just give me a idea of what the images were of, or the image names or whatever, I'll try to go back and look for them. And I wish I had a better answer for you, but I don't have one. But I can certainly make it up with you guys, and we can sit together just kind of a private review and let's go through them all together. So anyway, if anybody doesn't have any further questions, I have got to get on a planning meeting about our trip to Africa. So if you think of anything after the fact, or if you have any more comments to give, just feel free to message me or send me an email at russell@russellgraves.com. And that's 2 S's and 2 L's in Russell. And I will talk to you guys very soon. Thanks for coming today. And thank you, Rob, for your comments. Y'all take care.